Good morning. Good morning. And thank you, Mr. District Attorney Ken Thompson. Thank you, Reverend Bernard. This is an amazing opportunity for me to speak. I am highly honored and deeply grateful to be here. I'm going to talk about a great man, a great African American. And I'm going to talk about how this great man and great African American was erased from history. And I'm going to talk about how white society cast into oblivion the life stories of so many other African Americans. Samuel Jesse Battle was the son of former slaves. He was born in 1883 in New Bern, North Carolina. He was 16.5 pounds at birth. And he would later say, as a result, I guess I've always wanted to be large, and I have been large. In fact, later in life, 6'2", 240 pounds, his physical size and strength, he boxed for recreation, would be crucial to his success as a cop. Sam Battle loved his mother. For all his life, no son could love a mother more. She tended to the sprawling family, singing hymns as she hung the laundry. Sam Battle's father was a brick mason who had bought freedom, no small feat. His father was also a minister in the AME Zion Church. He instilled Christianity deeply in his son. As much as Battle relied on his physical power, he would draw even more strength from his faith. And so I found it fitting to draw the title of one righteous man from Psalm 106. Blessed are they who observe justice, who do righteousness at all times. With only an 8th grade education, Battle became New York City's first African-American cop in 1911, first black sergeant in 1926, first black lieutenant in 1935, and in 1941, New York City's first black parole commissioner, filling a seat that had been held by Yankee great Lou Gehrig. Battle also became an aide to Mayor LaGuardia and close friend of First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt.
How come I don't know?
Now, how do I know the intimate things that I know about Sam Battle? How do I know his thoughts? How do I know his feelings? I know because Samuel Battle wanted his story told. In 1949, he hired Langston Hughes, the genius poet of the Harlem Renaissance, to write his autobiography. Together, they produced an 80,000-word manuscript. Publishers rejected it out of hand. Why? Remember the question, why? It was my great fortune to discover the manuscript after it had gathered dust for more than 60 years. The document revealed Battle to be a man who had engaged with major African-American artists, writers, athletes, professionals, politicians, clergy, and gangsters. Thus, his personal saga enabled me, I hope, to illuminate African-American history in the first half of the 20th century. What made Sam Battle successful? First, he never knew slavery. Born into the first post-slavery generation, he felt freer to be a boy, not a boy. He insisted on being treated with dignity. I'll illustrate with an episode from Battle's young teen years, as rendered wonderfully by Hughes in Battle's own words. I passed the home of a prominent white family, the Bryans. On the sidewalk, one of the Bryan boys was playing marbles with others, so I stopped. I was about sure that I could beat any of them and said, "I'd like to shoot marbles. I can beat any of you playing, I'll bet." I stooped down to play, and they said to me, "And now you must pardon me. I'm going to say the most terrible of words, because this is how Battle and Hughes told the story. We don't want no niggers here." Mr. Bryan's son said that. As he did, I slapped him with my right hand on the side of the face. The boy screamed because I had a powerful hand. I was a big, strong, husky fellow. His mother ran out. His mother said, "What is your name, boy? We'll have you arrested." I said, "My name is John Brown." And Sam Battle knew who John Brown was. And I walked away. It did not take them long to discover that it was Tom Battle's son who had wanted to fight young Bryan. Since my father was well known to the white people of the town, the warrant was promptly withdrawn. Instead, we went to the Bryans' back door. Young Bryan still bore the marks of my hand. When my father saw the youngster's face and learned what I had done, I had struck a white boy. My father offered to let Mr. Bryan or his son whip me.
What?
Before either of them could answer, I said to my father, "I will die first.
Come
I
on.
will let you whip me,
Go ahead.
but no one else on earth."
That's right.
No one said a word,
That's right.
so I repeated, "You can whip me, but nobody else."
That's right.
Seeing that I meant what I said, my father whipped me. I was flogged severely there in the yard. This the white family accepted as satisfactory. I took my father's punishment and did not shed a tear. Nothing in the world could have made me cry.
That's so good.
Sam Battle struck out from New Bern on his own at the age of 16, at the opening of the 20th century. Well before the start of the Great Migration, his travels brought him to New York. He worked as a houseboy for wealthy white families while entering a vibrant black society centered on West 53rd Street. Battle stepped up the ladder by taking a job as a red cap at the old Grand Central Depot and got to know the luminaries who passed through the station. He learned about Italian food from opera tenor Enrico Caruso, had a bit part in a Broadway musical, and greeted Teddy Roosevelt, a man he adored, for hosting Booker T. Washington at dinner in the White House. After 6 years as a red cap, Battle set his mind on breaking the police department's color line. Looking back, he cast the decision merely as one of economics. Married and the father of a young son, he saw no future in toting luggage. But there was likely more to it than financial security. This was around 1910. The NAACP was being founded, and Battle became a life member. There were calls for African Americans to take the police civil service test. Battle became the one and began the fight of his life. When the test school denied him entry, Battle studied on his own. After he aced the exam, the police surgeon claimed Battle had a heart murmur. Battle got a white physician, and he couldn't use his black physician. They both knew that, so he got a white physician to certify to his health. When finally the police commissioner had no choice but to appoint Battle, cops subjected him to 2 years of silence. Someone left a note with a bullet hole warning him to quit. They sent a white woman to entrap Battle into a sexual liaison.
'Cause you know
They
how
put him on display on the
with them
street
snow bunnies.
like a carnival act.
Wow.
Tour buses brought gawkers to stare at the colored cop. And they made him sleep apart. This was before 911, before cars, before radios. Cops slept in station house dormitories to be on emergency reserve. Battle's fellow officers moved his bed to a room upstairs where they stored the American flag. Here's how he recalled the experience. Sometimes, lying on my cot in the silence, I would wonder how it was that many of the patrolmen in my precinct, who did not yet speak English well, had no such difficulties in getting on the police force as I, a Negro American, experienced. Native-born and foreign-born whites on the police force united in looking past me as though I were not a human being. In the loft, in the dark, with the stars and stripes, I wondered why. At that, Battle was embarked on a 3-decade fight to overcome, to prove that he was not only equal to white cops, but that he was better than they were. He studied for the sergeant's exam in the flag loft, telling himself that these men who would not speak to him today as an equal would answer to him tomorrow as a superior. Nothing came easy. 8 years after he joined the force, he was still a cop. The year was 1919, the red summer of 1919, America's worst spasm of white on black violence. It was a custom then in New York that men wore straw hats only till September 15th. After that, teenagers felt free to grab the hats and break them, which is what happened one night in Harlem. A group of black teenagers snatched the hat off a white man named Amanda Hayes, who happened to be an off-duty cop in civilian clothing. Hayes arrested the ringleader, but the teens freed their friend. Hayes fired his gun, mortally wounding a black man. Battle raced toward the gunfire. By the time he reached the scene, Hayes was on the ground amid a kicking throng. Wielding his nightstick, Battle pushed through the mob to stand over Hayes with his gun drawn. "This man is a policeman," he shouted. "We'll lynch him anyway," voices answered. People flocked to the street angrily on hearing that a white cop had killed a black man. Police reserves poured from the station house. They found Battle standing his ground as Hayes' protector. Reinforcements sealed the area. They all heard the story. The black cop had saved the white cop from rioting blacks. Finally, Battle won the gratitude of the department's white rank and file.
Of course.
A test preparation course for the sergeant's exam was getting underway. The class voted unanimously to grant Battle entry, for the first time conceding that a black man, this black man, was fit to command whites. Soon, he plunged into the swirling corruption of the Roaring Twenties. A black rogue named Baron Wilkins ran a Harlem nightclub where Duke Ellington got his start. With cops and politicians on the payroll, he openly sold liquor to white celebrities and socialites, despite prohibition. A corrupt commissioner ordered Battle to bust Wilkins. Battle did, and Tammany Hall's revenge was swift. The NYPD transferred Battle to the end of a subway line, the line that today is the L, here in Canarsie.
Oh, wow.
He called it the hind end of New York, where goats, chickens, and turkeys ran unmolested. And right here he stayed, commuting for hours on the subway to and from his home on Strivers Row in Harlem, and watching the commissioner promote less qualified men, even a drunk. Finally, reaching the limit of his Christian charity, Battle would write of the commissioner, "I cursed the day he was born, cursed all related to him, and wished the wrath of God upon him." But a quarter century later, on the death of the man who had banished him to Canarsie for 2 years, 7 months, 1 week, and 2 hours, Battle wrote, "I ask the Lord to forgive him." When the race was run, when Battle passed lazy afternoons with Jackie Robinson, he hired Hughes. Eleanor Roosevelt wrote this introduction to their book. "This is a record of a man's life, and as he tells it, you not only see one life, but you see the struggles and the victories and the defeats of a whole group of U.S. citizens. What courage you took, what remarkable stamina to be the first colored policeman in New York City. There were qualities of mind and heart and body that were purely personal. But above everything else, there was the realization that he was fighting not for himself alone, but for his people." 6 years later, Samuel Battle fell ill with leukemia. By then, the NYPD had 1,200 African American cops. He summoned to his bedside 5 nephews. His last words to them were, "The torch has been passed." Ever optimistic, he expected progress. Quote, "Not just for the Negro's sake, but for the sake of my country, I look forward to the day when all of us will do unto others as we would have others do unto us."
Amen.
He wrote to close his book. On August 7, 1966, Samuel Jesse Battle died at the age of 83, a man who had bent the long moral arc as far as he could, and then was erased from memory. Again, the question, why? Why was he erased from memory? Why did every publisher reject the autobiography Langston Hughes had written? The primary answer, racism. Because for most of U.S. history, until the Civil Rights Movement, mainstream publishers wanted nothing to do with African American life stories. After publication of One Righteous Man, I explored the industry's record of producing African American biographies and autobiographies. My discoveries were appalling. It was not until 1968 that the celebrated House of Simon & Schuster published its first African American biography. And it was only a children's book about Harriet Tubman. Across 7 decades, the count for Random House was just 5 books. For Holt, Reinhardt, and Winston, 3 books. And for Scribner's, merely 2. Every mainstream publisher was equally guilty. During the half century from 1900 to 1950, they offered a total of just 48 life stories, an average of less than 1 a year, with no new books in 22 of the 50 years. Meanwhile, behind a virtually impenetrable barrier, African Americans ached to have their stories told. As happened to Samuel Battle, so very many were erased from history, the saintly and the sinners alike. Because white Americans were hostile to African American life stories that necessarily indicted white racism. But those black lives did matter. Think just of young readers who learn about the world through books, who aspire, who need role models. Black and white, they had infinitesimal access to books about African American sports heroes, entertainers, or adventurers. And forget about civil rights crusaders. District Attorney Thompson mentioned Elizabeth Jennings. A century before Rosa Parks, she made history by refusing to give up her seat on a horse-drawn trolley. And New York State's highest court, because she did that, affirmed that African Americans had a right to ride on the trolleys. No one published her biography. In 1892, William Lewis became the first black college football All-American and went on to become a great lawyer. President Taft appointed him to a post beside the United States Attorney General. No one published his biography. At the turn of the 20th century, Timothy Thomas Fortune was one of America's most courageous newspaper editors. As leader of the New York Age, a wonderful, unbelievably terrific weekly newspaper that is largely forgotten because it served an African American readership. No one published Timothy Thomas Fortune's biography until 1972, long after it could have shown a light when light was most needed. No book told Nat Turner's story until 1967, and that was a novel. The losses to readers, black and white, to black history, and to the history of the United States of America are both shameful and immeasurable. God bless you, and thank you.
That was a good story. So, I'll see you guys later. Check your history book. Make sure you check your history.